It has been the traditional attitude in Indian spirituality to look upon the path of knowledge as exclusive, the adherents of the path of love, they look upon theirs as the one path, and those who tread the path of works look askance at the followers of the other two. Of these three, the arrogance of those who take up the path of knowledge is insufferable. At any rate, those who follow the path of pseudo-knowledge. There is a well-known story of Vivekananda. He was very young. In one of his visits to his master, someone told him that across the river there was the house of a very great scholar, renowned man, famous, and he was told that he would do well to call upon him and learn from him what he had to say about God. Sheerly out of curiosity, the young man went to the scholar's house, but found that he had gone for bath in the river. He waited, and in the meanwhile he stepped into the library of the great man and found all walls full of almirahs and stacks of volumes after volumes. He handled a few of them, put them back. By that time the celebrity arrived, and after due introductions, the young man looked up at him and asked, "Sir, have you really read all these volumes?" He said, "What doubt is there, my dear boy? I have read." Then he said, "But I have found some volumes, even the pages are not opened." The man was equal to the occasion. He said, "You see, someone had borrowed that book and he didn't return. I have replaced that book with a new one now." Well, Sri Aurobindo makes certain good-humored, sardonic remarks on this pride of the intellect, which looks down upon the humility, the humble approach of the devotee to the Lord. He points out that while it is true that knowledge helps one to scale the altitudes of the spirit, to know more and more of the heights of being, it is equally true that it misses something of the largeness of the heart, the depths and the profounds of the emotions, which open the gates into the sweet side of divine. There is also a tendency in the path of knowledge to give a false status of superiority to the impersonal over the personal aspect of the divine. These followers of the path of knowledge have it that what takes form, what expresses itself in a personality is limited, and what breaks out of the form, the infinite, the impersonal, the qualityless, the void, these are the real truths. They are the absolute. But if you ask the adorer of form, the devotee who meets the divine in its sweet personality, the personality that pours out love, he will not trade any one realization of his to 100 realizations of the jnani or the knower. He, on the other hand, looks down upon the dry as sawdust knowledge of the intellectual. He says, here is the true vibration, the true taste of the bliss of love. The dry aridities of knowledge do not satisfy me. Sri Aurobindo is careful to point out that while the God lover is right in what he says, he does miss the truth that a love that knows, love that is enlightened, love that is lit by the lamp of knowledge is far more satisfying than an ignorant knowledge. Knowledge that is at the mercy of circumstances. Love that is founded on true understanding, on a right grasp of the elements in the situation, that is more rounded, more full. In his integral yoga, Sri Aurobindo reconciles the conflicting claims of these traditional three paths of knowledge in the Indian tradition. He points out how, if we admit that the expression of the divine in man is not limited to one power, one faculty, there is no difficulty. In fact, all of us are aware that there is in us the faculty, the element of knowledge, will and love. The mind, the will, the heart. Now these are the three modes of self-expression of the divine in each man. It may be all right to start at any one point, from any one of these, where one is most awake. By nature, I may be more developed in mind. I start with a study of what others have said, on the basis of their experience, on the basis of their speculation, backed up by experience and realization. I start on the way of knowledge. But as one goes not only understanding the truths that are taught, but assimilating them in one's own consciousness and translating the knowledge to the best of one's capacity in day-to-day life. As one begins to understand the divinity as expressed, as realized, whether in one's depths or in the heights of one's being, there is an awakening of love of devotion to the divine that one has begun to know. Knowledge culminates in love. True knowledge leads to true love of the divine. Otherwise, it remains a pure, philosophical, speculative knowledge. Knowledge that is true to the consciousness, knowledge that is assimilated in one's consciousness, is bound to awake love as its consequence. And once there is knowledge crowned by love, the will automatically and spontaneously blossoms forth in pouring out the various powers and energies of the being in consecration to the divine, so experienced in knowledge, so experienced in love. So even though one starts from the standpoint of knowledge, on the path of knowledge, sincerely pursued in a comprehensive way and not exclusive way, the path debouches into the path of love and leads to the path of works. Ultimately, knowledge, love, works all combine to produce a rich and many-sided realization. Similarly, I start with the path of devotion. I have a spontaneous welling up of feelings and emotions to God, to him or her who embodies God for me, towards anything that recalls the divinity to me. That is an indication that that part in me is ready, and I have to make that as the focal point for the initial concentration of all my energies and powers, faculties, and make a beginning on that path. Gradually, however, the more and more devotion spreads, stabilizes itself, deepens itself into adoration, and adoration melts into love, I begin to realize that the divine which I worshipped, the divine which I waited upon in the solitude of my heart, is not confined to my initial conception. More and more aspects of the divine begin to reveal themselves, and the natural knowledge begins to dawn about the integral nature of the divine. The key is indeed love, but as the key turns, treasures of knowledge reveal themselves, and they add a certain comprehensiveness and width of outlook to the devotee. And if that knowledge that the divine is spread over, if the warmth and the ebullition that result from love for the divine is true, one cannot remain satisfied by bottling up those experiences in oneself. One delights in consecrating all of oneself, thoughts, feelings, emotions, activities, even physical and vital movements, consecrating them to God. There is an effortless channelizing of the dynamic will in the path of works. The more one works in the spirit of love, with the background of this knowledge of the comprehensive manifestation of God, the richer becomes the quality of the works that are done. So also, if one is neither gifted with the clarities of mind, with the clarities of knowledge, if one finds the heart dry for any reason, due to any discipline or any kind of frustration, one finds the doors of the heart locked, and one is incapable, apparently incapable of any warmth of feeling towards the divine whom one does not see physically. But if he has the will to turn his life Godward, then he takes the path of works. Whatever activities are assigned to him by the circumstances, he turns them into channels of outpouring of his consciousness towards the divine. He does the works in a spirit of disinterested service, and in the measure of the sincerity he brings to bear in his practice, on his practice of the yoga of the path of works, there is a loosening of the heartstrings. He begins to feel a certain warmth, a certain closeness to him, to the master, to whom he offers his work. There is an automatic growth of inner relation, and with the formation and growth of this inner relation, there is a growth of sentiment, a growth of devotion, which he begins to cherish. That begins, that opens the fount of love. And as his will gets trained in selfless consecration, his heart backs up the endeavor by adoration and warmth of sentiment developing into love. He feels and begins to cognize the different features of the presence of the master. Bit by bit, he begins to understand and respond to the presence of the divine in him, around him, and above him. Thus, from whichever point you start, of works, of love, or of knowledge, properly pursued, every path gathers up the realizations of the other two paths, and in the end, the seeker, the integral yoga, finds that all of them combine to produce a magnificent orchestra of the individual harmony in terms of a divine diapason. This forms a kind of introduction to Sri Aurobindo's treatment of the way of love. All that he wants to emphasize is that this way of love is not an exclusive path. It combines in itself, if not in the beginning, as it develops, as it culminates, the gains of the path of knowledge and the path of works. From the divine point of view, all are equal. It is only to our petty human standpoint, dominated by the one-sided knowledge of mind, that one may appear superior and one inferior. But in the divine scheme of things, as you know, there is nothing inferior, there is nothing superior. All has its role, its legitimate work. It all depends upon the spirit with which we look at things. Everything has its place when looked at in the proper perspective. Love, knowledge, action. These are the three fundamental elements in the being of man, linking him with the divine. The divine expresses itself in all the three, and all the three can be utilized as channels of approach to the divine. If all are combined with the judicious selection and assimilation, the result is quicker and richer. There was a question in the earlier part of this chapter. Is she here? Angela is here? No. It was just a sentence which was not understood, but we have spoken of the spirit of it. Any questions? A sign of wisdom and also of lethargy.
It's possible, of course, I better ask these things. Is it possible to begin with all three instead of one?
Yes, that is precisely what Mother wants us to do. Because a person who turns to spiritual life means that he has developed in his evolution to a certain standard. He is aware of so many parts of his being. He is certainly aware of his will. So he developed in mind enough, and certainly he is conscious of his heart, his feelings. And in the beginning itself, if we have this integrated approach, as Mother wants us to have, there is a harmonious growth in yoga. Otherwise, as I was typing the other day, I think it was one of the letters to Champaklal. It was said in a different context. He says, by going to the Himalayas, for instance, and doing sadhana there, you may develop powers of meditation, trance, going into yourself, but you are lost to the larger and the vaster realization of the divine in the universe. So if when we start with the consecration of our energies in disinterested work. At the same time, develop the finer emotions and turn them Godward, linking our work with the direction of the flow of our emotions, and also at the same time take care to refine our mind, clarify our understanding, guard ourselves from errors of offering our things, offering our works and emotions to inferior powers, by avoiding it, by knowing truly and making them over to the true divine reality. One saves oneself from many pitfalls, and each element helps and guards the others. It is a quicker and, I would say, a more natural process of spiritual evolution, more in keeping with the intention, the divine intention in the cosmos, than the several exclusive pursuits. It is for sake of clarifying things that Sri Aurobindo says one starts at any point. But when one can, one should certainly start at all points. We in the 20th century know that man is not, does not consist of a single personality. Each one is aware of the multiple personalities in him. And unless the multiple personality develops, man does not turn to yoga, to spiritual life. A person turns to spiritual life and the development, evolutionary development has reached a certain minimum multifaceted pattern around the soul. The soul is awake on many fronts. Apparently it may not be so, but with a slight cultivation, the soul reveals that it thirsts for knowledge, it flows with love, and it surges in willings. That is mother's distinctive contribution, that you must start in a large way. Though the advance may appear slow in the earlier stages, the results are far more satisfying, and the response it evokes, the comprehensive nature of the working of the grace that is sent down, makes up for everything and much more.
The question on a completely different subject. It's about the world situation. If people are talking so much about disasters coming, and that things will be wiped out and great cataclysms are coming. And it seems to me that it won't happen like that. That the world it's as though it's backing up. It's gone down a wrong road and it's backing up. It's going to go down another road. And it seems to me that the disasters will come more in the consciousness of the people who are not developed. They will say, oh, it's terrible, and oh, I haven't got this, and oh, I haven't got that. But somebody who's more developed will have enough to eat and enough to wear, and they'll be all right. Is it like that?
For those who are developed, physical disasters don't have that much relevance, whether they have enough to eat and drink or not. For them there is no problem. For the rest of the earth, I think the stage is past when there could be possibility of a great fallback of evolutionary nature casting aside man on the roadside and going on to develop a new species. That stage is past. The higher consciousness, levels of higher consciousness have already descended and are integrating themselves with the earth. And I do not expect at all any such kind of disasters or catastrophes as would hold back the progress of mankind. What aberrations you see, they are very much on the surface. We have been here, it is also, we must know that the mass media which dishes out reports and news to us all over the world of happenings, world events, trends, they are gone into the wrong track and given to exaggerate small, inconsequential things. And today, when there is such a shortage of newsprint, newspapers have had to close down certain journals. Paper sheets have to be cut short. Nearly 1 or 2 columns are devoted with photographs, abominable photographs, of a new phenomena that has started in the United States. They say it has started all of a sudden during the last few weeks. Young men simply started stripping themselves and running along crowded thoroughfares naked. Well, if one is completely naked, there is some artistry about it at least. These, to make themselves more grotesque, they had their headgear, they had their shoes and stockings, and they were running. Naturally, this is against law, this is against decency. The police would pursue them and try to arrest them. There would be fist fights, there would be stone throwings. And the climax was reached when the Vice President of the United States, he was due to preside over a ceremony, and he was greeted by these young men and women, all what is called streaking, the phenomena of streaking. They will not allow themselves to be caught, but they will rush. And within 3 days of the appearance of this phenomena in the United States, under the Eiffel Tower in Paris, other French youth, they have started repeating it. Now, this was put down as a sign of youth unrest, youth ferment. All right, not to be outdone, to prove, as if to prove it is not so. The next day, the older people have started, and because they can't run, so they have given it a different name called snailing. The whole thing is graphically described. So we will wonder what kind of world we are in. These are things to be laughed out. If you make much of it, it tends to stick. If they are looked upon as it is some sort of aberrations, you see, and don't take notice of it, they just die down. It is like children in our ashram, for instance, wanting attention from their mothers. The mothers are busy, they don't look. To want attention, they will do all kinds of things. If you don't pay too much attention to certain things, legitimate attention certainly, but after all, youth unrest, are we not really making too much of it? Is the unrest really confined only to the youth? The unrest is spread over all the layers of society. At every stage, at every level, there is an imbalance calling for redress, calling for readjustment. And at the bottom of it is the refusal of man to keep pace with the advancing pace of nature in evolution. Nature calls forth for a certain readjustment, reformation, giving up by each one of the individual egoistic standpoint and taking steps to enlarge the consciousness, to keep abreast of the enlarging movement of the universal consciousness. As long as individuals, men as individuals and men as members of collectivity, refuse to move out from their old primitive moorings to the selfishness and ego, these things will continue, and it is to demonstrate the absurdity of the situation that all kinds of phenomena are being heaped upon us. These are matters that are symptomatic of a certain imbalance. By themselves, they are oddities, but they are to be taken as signposts of the stagnation that has taken place. And the human vitality, the human energy and force takes all kinds of aberrant forms because the right and legitimate avenues are denied to it by the obstinacy of man. Narad, you wanted to?
Back to love and knowledge. I'd like to ask about the tremendous emphasis of love in solitude, and ask you to comment on these two passages. Death says to solitude, know also, and knowing thou shalt cease to love, and cease to live, delivered from thy love. Solitude answers, when I have loved forever, I shall go. The second passage is when she returns at the very end of Satya. She says, when the sage asks her what transformation has occurred in you, to feel love and oneness is to live. This is all the truth. I need for us to lose.
Death knows that he will lose his empire once love comes into its own, because love is eternal. True love knows no end. Love brings one to the heart of things, to the soul of things. That is why death wants to mislead Savitri, that when you really begin to know the truth, when you begin to analyze, you will find love just melting away. Love has no real existence. It is fashioned out of the hopes and imaginations of man. As you know, as your knowledge grows, you will see how transient love is. She replies, no, as I love more and more, as I get to the heart of love, I shall know everything. There love and knowledge melt into one. And the crux is the culmination of love, even as the acme of knowledge is the realization of a total oneness. A oneness with the divine in itself and as manifested all over, at all levels. Oneness of being, oneness of life, oneness of mind, oneness of everything. The more one loves, the more one identifies oneself with the object of love and becomes one with it. So this realization of oneness is the final stage of the growth of love through all the vicissitudes of evolution. The supreme love culminates in a total identity of the lover and the loved.
I think for many of us, one of our most immediate approaches to the divine has always been the form that we have been given in life. And especially for us here in Oregon, in terms of photographs, because we were very not much physical contact. But I know lately that some people have felt a spontaneous movement of wanting to not have mother's photographs around anymore, as if, not as a negative thing, but as if it is an old form, and that perhaps without them, the new form will be found. Could you just comment on that, on this feeling?
I don't know about the new form, but I would say that this feeling that the photographs are no more central to our relation with the mother is in keeping with the altered situation. She has withdrawn from her physical form. She is now present in a concrete, impactable way all around. And when one feels it, when one feels she is here, the photograph has no relevance. One doesn't look at it as one used to do it. This is not at all a negative moment, because it has happened to me also. I look at certain photographs out of habit. If I don't look, I feel something, there is a physical lack. Otherwise, the feeling is, she is there, where to look? I pass by the staircase when I go upstairs. I don't look at the cot that is kept there. Where is the necessity? If I need a physical means to contact myself with her consciousness, then that physical object has a relevance. That situation has changed. And nobody knows what is going to be the form in which the new manifestation is to take place. Nobody knows. She herself left it vague when she was asked. And after all, why do you want to confine her? Why should anybody want to confine her to this kind of human form? Why can't we see mother in a flower, in a child, in a beautiful movement, in an expression of gratitude, of joy on behalf of any? Why don't you see the mother's consciousness expressing itself there? Mother's consciousness is no more confined to the physical person whom we call the mother. It was a tenement, it was a habitation. That purpose is over. She has come into her own. She is in us, she is in me, she is in you. We have only to awake, to look for her presence. Long, long ago, I don't know whether it was Sri Aurobindo or Mother who said, look rather and feel the presence than try to see the form. Somebody had asked a question regarding meditation, what form we should concentrate upon. I think it was Sri Aurobindo, yes. He said, rather feel the presence, that's easy and more natural. Then try to recall the form and concentrate upon it. If form is to play a part in your spiritual growth, form will come spontaneously and reveal itself. I know I am. I do not need to look into the mirror to see if I am. One just exists. So she just is there. Samadhi is a profound concentration of the vibrations of their physical embodiment, both of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. By going physically near to those vibrations, subtle physical vibrations, many get that opening. Many feel a nearness to the Mother which they do not otherwise do. Many feel openings in different centers of their being when they grow physically, because they are very much conscious of their physical bodies themselves. Also, there lie the bodies of those whom we loved, whom we cherish. We don't need to go there for spiritual experience. We go because somebody whom we love is there. The body is there, which we have worshipped, which we have cherished, which we have loved. So it is a spontaneous feeling of love that we go, not to gain a spiritual experience, not to effect an opening in ourselves, though all those things can happen. There are many who do not go. They don't need to go. But there are those who need. There are those who go even without the need, out of a spontaneous movement. But the fact remains that on the physical plane, for those who live in the physical consciousness normally, physical symbols, physical images, physical icons, they form sort of links with the supraphysical realities.
You say, when you talked about divine love last week, you mentioned the aspect of divine love, loving the divine last week. And very we do not say that love. divine love is in effect living the divine in everyone else.
Divine love for the divine is incomplete unless you love the divine in others also. Mother has very well said, it is meaningless for sadhaks to quarrel with each other and tell that they love me. She said, if people really love me, you have to love me in others also. So true love for the divine is incomplete unless love flows to the divine in the universe, in those around you. Whether they respond or not, it shouldn't really matter. But on our side, on the side of those who are awakened and who house that flame of love, there should be a continuous emanation only of forces and vibrations and thoughts of love. Love does not care whether it is requited, whether it is recognized. Love is not less if it is not recognized. Certainly, if love is responded to, it grows. That's another matter. It is a positive aspect. But one should allow love to radiate more and more, wider and wider. Only that way love can be stabilized and established and helped to grow in oneself.
Yes, with the mother's withdrawal from body, there arises the question of her guidance to those who have left left Oroville. This is a particular situation that needs some light. That is in relation to Oroville. There is a movement in America to establish what is called an Oroville West. That is an Oroville in America. Rather than a center, an Oroville West. Now, in 1969, when that movement occurred, a mother indicated that that was not the thing to do through Judah. That Oroville, India, must be well established before any such other Orovilles are attempted.
Right.
In view of this, what is one's attitude to be toward those who may not know this, but are doing something that will work against the place that Mother has designated as a place for the dream of the Lord to be realized.
Apart from the fact that these experiments are premature, they dissipate the energies, the higher energies that are released into the atmosphere. And in the very nature of things, this project or experiment has to be established in one place solidly on earth first. It is only when it is firmly rooted, when it is proved to be workable, when it develops a kind of personality of its own, that it can be reproduced elsewhere. But first in the center there has to grow Oroville. Otherwise, what is going to happen? That what has happened regarding centers, here in the centers. There are 100 centers, each one weaker than the other. With the result that nowhere outside Pondicherry there is a true center. Mother had very much discouraged in the beginning. But each one placed different reasons why they should have centers in their houses, in their places. But this is a very mischievous game of elements that want to sabotage Auroville, to make people think on lines of starting Aurovilles in different countries already. What are you going to start there unless it is first established here and becomes a part of the earth consciousness aspiring towards divinity? Becomes first a focal point of the emerging human consciousness into the diviner belts. Unless you give it shape here, unless you formulate it, unless the two ends are joined and the city of consciousness, that is Auroville, is well formed, patterned, what are you going to reproduce? Only the idea will remain there. It will receive a check at some level and it will peter out. This is the surest way of adding to the negative side of things. One can have friends of Auroville, helpers of Auroville, but certainly to say West Auroville or North Auroville and all that, I do think it is premature and it is doomed to failure. It is not just a thing of building so many, zones, Eastern, Western, International and all these, reproducing the plans. But it is the men, it is the people who are to give flesh to the whole construction. It is the consciousness. One can't certainly develop it outside as at this moment. They are raw. The best of our people who have goodwill are raw from the spiritual point of view. They have enthusiasm, they have devotion, everything. But they are not ready. They can participate only indirectly. I don't know whether I told you, about 20 years ago there was an attempt. Somebody took permission from the mother to start a branch of Sri Aurobindo Ashram in North India. First mother didn't want. She said you can start a center. That person was not satisfied, more ambitious. He said no, we will reproduce all that goes on here and we will have sadhaks, we will have these things and we will have a branch. Mother reluctantly agreed but told him, every time you write Sri Aurobindo Ashram, put branch. So he said yes. And almost the first thing that they did there, in starting an ashram branch there, was to give an order to those Japanese tables, dining room, those what they are using in the dining room, of that size and that shape. That was the first requirement, to have these tables, those small napkins, and that kind of food, that round bread and milk, and exactly. Nothing else was reproduced. It became a laughing stock. They took photographs and sent it to mother, how people are eating just exactly as in the dining room and all. Similarly, they can have a Matruman there, they can have the international zone, agricultural zone and all these, if you have lands, if you have money. But then, there is Findhorn going on, there is Unity Farm, so many experiments I have been hearing, I have been getting literature from people. But the central consciousness is lacking. They are still going into those old rounds, that salvation is for Christ, those chosen by Christ, salvation will come through repentance. All those ideas are there. They just can't see that they are bringing down Christ to their little mold. It is a divine afflatus. Sri Aurobindo pointed out that a great afflatus came, but there was an interference from the vital world, and what was intended to be a large movement got constricted. So all these movements towards unity, human unity, higher consciousness, whether in Scotland, America, all these, they are severely limited by the religious conception of Christianity. I personally have nothing against any religion. I belong to no religion. But I refuse to accept that the Christianity as it is practiced is the real teaching of Christ, or Buddhism as it is taught today is the real teaching of Buddha. These teachings came to be formulated years after the Masters passed. Imagine if Sri Aurobindo had not written the Life Divine. If some people, professors or people had come after 50 years of Sri Aurobindo's passing away, how would they formulate the Gospel of Life Divine? Isn't it? It would be something as I said just now. These physical details are inconsequential. The new organization, the new world has to form first on the level of consciousness. Physical details are secondary.
Then could you say, sort of in following that, maybe a corollary that regardless of Mother's being infused in the whole world more now than before, spiritually the center of this world, at least, if not the universe, is between here and planetary table.
I tell you, thing is, here is the greatest concentration